Today's guest is Debbi Dachinger, is a media visibility certified coach who offers group and private sessions to write a highly engaging book. She also runs a fully done for the author guaranteed international best-selling book launch program, an anthology book program that she puts the entire project together from start to successful finish. At last, Debbi teaches how to be interviewed on the radio and podcast shows for massive results. For 15 plus years, Debbi hosts the Dare to Dream award winning podcast. Although she offers and loves her media visibility work, the core of her being is deeply spiritual. So, welcome, Debbi.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So good to be here with you, fellow East Coaster, fellow person who's also into a buffet of different things. So I
Absolutely.
look forward to this.
Yeah, I find it interesting the ability to seek and to find, or at least go on the journey of seeking, which is such an interesting um, pathway for people who are seeking, but maybe not so for others who are watching people seek. Um, what I wanted to get into is in terms of everybody has a story, and everybody sometimes thinks their story isn't special enough to share or to write or to speak of. And yet there are people who share their stories and actually assist other people in their lives in being able to compare or have compatibility with some of the things that people experience. What does your work specifically do, and how do you assist people?
I often have spiritual messengers who come to me. That tends to be the predominant people in my tribe. And indeed, I really feel like this is an auspicious time that our souls agreed to be alive. We have pretty big shoulders, right? Euphemistically, to say, I'm okay to come back to earth at this time during a great change that's going to feel very uncomfortable at times. Plus, allowing ourselves to literally be ascended and go through that experience. And I could say a lot about that. Uh, and people came here with a message. And I think, there were times throughout history where light workers were not invited to the party, right? Excuse me. Witches were burned, people were killed, known as sorcerers, evil, demons, when in fact they were just gifted. And most of us actually lived through that time who find ourselves very gifted at this time. And I feel like it's not so anymore. Now it's actually embraced. We know it is so huge. I just had a conversation with somebody, a new connection in Canada, in Toronto, and she was even saying that their health system has gone just awful. It's so bad. It's as bad as the United States. And more, even Canadians are turning to holistic health. So I think it's a really important time for us, folks, whether or not you're spiritual, that you have a message, that you just trust what comes up for you, that it is yours to tell or do. So I help people specifically writing their book. And I believe in writing a highly engaging book, a page turner book, because you're up against a lot of people out there right now. So it's important to stand out from the noise. I also have a company that takes books to guaranteed international bestseller, and I do all the heavy lifting for the author. And then I show people how to be interviewed on radio and podcasts so they can get massive results. Some people don't know how to do it. I just finished a 5-day challenge helping people on Facebook do that, and it's amazing. Amazing to see what people start creating and how successful they become. And then there's people who actually do the interviews and they're finding I'm not getting results. So they come to me as well. And then you mentioned a few other things I do in between, but it is really my great pleasure to help people whose voices I believe deserve to be heard right now, to be seen and heard. Whether it's all of those things we mentioned or just one of those pieces, it doesn't matter. Getting out there, letting people know you exist, letting your community find you, increasing your business, your database, sales, workshops. You have to trust that you are being given the gifts you are right now for great reason and that they're meant to be heard and seen.
Yeah, I think patience is one of the key factors in terms of sticking it through and remaining on the path. Um, as you speak about the ability to assist people in telling their story or writing a profound book, where did your journey begin? How did it begin?
My journey's been so wild, and thank you for asking that question because I want to weave together two of the things you said. On the one hand, I have been spiritual since I definitely came here just like this, but I didn't know it for so long. And I just thought spiritual, like I was very kind of mainstream ish. And I thought, oh, I just do this spirituality stuff because it fascinates me and also because it's healing. And I like to be healed. I like the growth very much in the self development. But much to my surprise, 15 and a half years ago, when I started doing radio, and I started out on radio, I quickly realized with all the guests who are coming on my show, and I realized, this is the most important time of my week to have this conversation. And then I quickly realized this is the most important conversation. And then I realized this is my highest value in life. I'm actually the deepest. Spirituality is so huge for me, and I'm a closet case. Like I didn't even know I was in the closet. And so, I stepped out in a big way and said, I have to acknowledge this value in my life and let it take me where it will. So it really increased my journey profoundly. And then people came forward. I had psychics on my show who would say, you need to know things about yourself and some gifts you have that you haven't realized, changed my life. And so that's been one path, Adam. And then the other path is this professional life. The one thing I've done really well is surrender and also follow energy. And I just want to be really clear and say a caveat here. I'm also really suck at surrender, but I'm working on it. But every profound moment in my life where perfect change, big change has been created because I didn't know what else to do except surrender. And so I was an actress and a singer for most of my life. I performed around the world and I loved it. And then I had a time where everything changed inside of me. My desire to flesh out my character, learn my lines, work on things. And I was sitting back going, what's going on? I had been cast in more films and theater productions than ever before, and something was wrong. And I had so much trouble giving it up because it's all I'd ever known about myself. I was an entertainer. Didn't go away for 3 years. And I finally said, I don't know what else to do except give it up to the divine. And if there's something else for me to do, let me know. And I spent many years not knowing, just trying different things, following energy. I made jewelry for a while, very successfully, sold it in stores. I sang with a jazz band and a big band. That was awesome. I went to Toastmasters and went all the way up to the gold level and started speaking around Los Angeles and delivering workshops. And each of these pieces was beautiful, but none of them was it. And so my life went. I got a call for a cartoon, and somebody said a producer recommended you for this role. They had a very big name drop out of their cartoon. Would you be willing to audition? I was up against a lot of people, and like between you and me, I'd never done a cartoon, but I loved the script. I came up with 2 different reads and I got cast. Boom, first audition. I got the job. Loved voiceovers so much. Specifically, cartoon work was for me. And then I wanted to do more. I got an agent. The agent started sending me out so much. And then I saw an ad for radio saying we're looking for a new host for a show. So I went in for that. I got that job thinking I'm just doing radio in order that I can get more voice work, get my voice out there. I was so wrong, but it was also so right. Like the divine perfectly set this up because I did this music show for a while. And then they said, we love what you're doing. We want to give you your own talk show. I went home. I got this huge download, Dare to Dream. I've been creating dreams my whole life. I want to teach people, help people. So it started out like that, just doing this quote unquote transformational show until I realized, oh my God, I'm so spiritual. Like this is so all of who I am. And then it became this deep dive. Like I got into people who are doing channeling, and I got into people who are doing cutting edge stuff I'd never heard of. And UFOs started to present themselves to me. And, people who had that conversation, whereas before I was like, really, very skeptical about it. And then I don't know, something changed in me and I felt truth. This is truth. I need to follow this. This has opened me up. Oh, it's changed me so much. I'm so grateful for the masterclass that's become and for the level of conversation I'm able to have with folks. And so if people were sitting back and watching me, I started writing books and they became international bestsellers because I figured out the whole system. It was a lot of work, but God bless all the energy I had then because I was sort of street smart, and whatever I could do to learn something I wanted to learn. And then I started being interviewed. Radio shows were coming to me and saying, "You're an expert in this, creating dreams. We want to interview you." And it was just amazing. So I'm doing this, and concurrently, there's people in transformation coming to me and saying, "Can you show me how to write a book? Can you show me how to be interviewed and get results like that?" And so this industry was born because of people's need. And I fulfilled it. I opened my doors to private sessions and to group sessions. I still do it today. It's a great joy spot for me because of who I attract. And it's another form of transformation. I see people come in often, not always, but a lot of times people say, "I can't write. I'm not good at this. Definitely, I don't know what I'm doing," most people. And that's okay. It's all legit. You can't know what you've never done before. And I see them through the time they're working with me and they become such good writers. They know exactly what they're doing. They put beautiful work out into the world. And I feel very proud of that I'm able to facilitate and guide people and be part of their journey. And I often become friends. My classes they're intimate, they're very caring, they're very supporting. And so even though I feel like a lot of why I'm here is to be in the spotlight, if I can say it like that, because I also sing and I've got a very uplifting band called Lions of Lyra. We do music. So I feel like that plus doing retreats and facilitating healing for people. I'm stepping into shamanism next year. There's a lot opening up for me.
Yeah,
So that feels like my deal. But the fact that I also get to work with these people and help them go become their brilliance, it's like very humbling and very honoring. So I would say that is the long story of who I am and what I do.
yeah. Usually, when people are on a path of authenticity, of finding their true self, there's always some type of maybe trauma or stress that takes place. Maybe the feather hitting them, or then eventually, if they don't pay attention, it could be the brick. Uh, so many people I interview have near-death experiences, or people who are associated with people who have near-death experiences. And from every time in speaking with them, there's always some type of path that they're on that they're supposed to be on, and they wind up going off track for a moment or for a time, and eventually spirit brings them back to that path and awakens them to what their true calling is. In terms of, I've watched a few videos and I've heard you speak about your claircognizant abilities. When did you first recognize that? Was it during that time when you were looking for the authenticity during your acting days, or you always were aware of it?
I had no clue, Adam, at all. And in fact, the what I alluded to earlier, this psychic who said, "I have something to tell you." Very early on in my career, she asked me when we got off radio and the ads were playing, she said, "There's a word I want to give you. Have you ever heard of clairsentience?" I said, "No, I have no idea." She said, "I want you to write this down." She spelled it. And she said, "And I want you to look it up. And then I want you to call me in 3 days." So I Googled it and I'm reading this material. And I mean, for 3 days, I was immersed in reading everything to do with claircognizance, clairsentience. I was like, oh my God, this describes something so tremendous about me. It's like saying, here's a piece of your DNA. And I had rejected it. I had made myself so wrong my whole life, not understanding that I had a profound awareness, like a matrix of what was really happening with people, with locations, with situations that I could smell things. I think I actually had a gift for dead people, but I had shut it down a long time ago because I had a few experiences that scared me too much. And, without a doubt, I have certain psychic abilities. They're really interesting because people couldn't exactly say, "Can you give me a reading?" Although I've had that happen. It's way more that it just very organically happens, massive downloads. And I just know what I know. And yeah, this woman set me free. I will forever be grateful to her for doing that. And when I called her back after 3 days, I was like, oh my God, like this is who I am. And what was great about it, Adam, is I embraced it completely. And I started playing with it. Like, what do I know? I'm in this situation. What do I know? And let's test it out and see if that's right. And
Right,
I was
right.
amazed, right? It's like pretty much 100% accuracy. So because it was fun, it opened me up to so much. And it really helps me with clients, right? Helps me even in interviewing people. Like I can feel energy and musicality of things and where they need to go.
Did you come from a background of anyone accepting that, those behaviors, or your thinking, or was it like the black sheep of the family type of?
It's so interesting because I come from a very interesting background. Like nobody ever talked about this. Today, my mom was pretty difficult growing up. She was kind of neurotic and stuff, and there was a lot going on for her. And it made it difficult for us as kids, and today, and I have a lot of love for her today, a lot of forgiveness. My goodness, I've been through a journey with that. And now I look at her, I can see her completely. And I realize I think she was highly gifted and highly shut down. There was nobody to nurture that in her.
Right.
My grandfather, who I was really close to, was an inventor. He was very famous in music and he went around the world speaking. He wrote books. He was very well known in what he did. And he was really cutting edge. He used to do things like the Alexander technique and Feldenkrais and
Wow.
like high level psychology at a time when nobody was doing these things. And he would implement them in his work. So he was super cutting edge. I have a feeling he was also gifted, but nobody talked about that stuff back then. And it was um, yeah, pretty strange. So no, nobody nurtured that in me. But here's the good news. Because I had a difficult childhood,
Right.
it made me want to heal. Like no matter what, pain was a great motivator. I'll do anything to get out of this pain. I'll do anything to heal this aberration that's going on because of what happened. And that set me on the path of working with extraordinary people and meeting at young ages. I didn't even understand. People would give me cassette tapes back then and say, "Oh, you got to listen to this." And I'd listen and go, something's going on here. I've never heard a speaker like this. And the person would tell me, well, they're channeling this energy.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's channeling? I was so young, but I was just, grandfathered into all this stuff at such a young age. God, I'm grateful for that. And I always thought all these other people are healers. So, the fact that even me being able to own the fact that I'm a healer, that's new. That's since 2019
Right.
because I had some major downloads from the divine, uh, trying to say to me, "Sweetie, you've been a shaman, you've been a priestess, you've been a healer, and you are again." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" "Oh, yeah, the people I bring on my show, yes. People in my life and all my friends, yes." "Nope," they said, "you." And so I did some past life regressions, and wow, saw very clearly my lives as a shaman, very clearly as a not from this planet priestess, and some beautiful things, I still have a deep connection with. Was too afraid to follow the shaman path for many reasons, wasn't ready. And recently got this, I just knew. I heard someone talking about a 6-month program, and I know this person, they're very famous, and I had avoided this, and I just said to myself, "Sweetie, if not now, when?" Really. Like time marches on, you're in the middle of an ascension, you have been called. And so I said yes, and I got accepted into the program. So we start in 6 weeks.
Interesting. Yeah,
I'm claiming it.
I've also gone up that path myself through my own
Yeah.
personal trauma and drama in my life.
Mm.
I'd say more trauma, childhood trauma, relationship trauma. I think we find ourselves on the path that we're supposed to be on, and I think those almost like a ball in a pinball machine being bounced around and just trying to stay from going down the hole or being knocked down that hole. And I think the more we build up that resiliency, I think the more information that we want to receive to grow and to expand. You have an interest as well in UFOs and in that ET and universal, expansion. Maybe you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
It's so interesting because, like I said, I was really skeptical. I was. I was an eye roller. I just didn't believe any of that stuff. And when it was time, I was able to watch some interviews on Gaia TV, and just something inside of me went, this is fact, man. This is total fact.
Yeah.
And then, oh, so then I started bringing people on my show to have that conversation. And some of those people become friends of mine. I'm so fortunate. I've had people who channel extraterrestrials, and that's been massive. And I've had, Bashar has been on my show. Daryl Anka has been on my show. He just came on for the 4th time. I've got Vitica Koolhof from Amsterdam, and she channels Arjun. I mean, I could go on and on. And then I've had people who have been abducted. And so that's how it started. Just this hunger, it was impossible to satiate how much I wanted to learn about this and how deep I went into it and how mind-blowing it was. I also went from a lot of fear because of the movie mentality. Oh my God, they're going to land. They're going to take our brains. It's going to be terrible. They'll take over the planet and they'll kill us or make us slaves. And, then I quickly realized through all these conversations, look, they're not all benevolent. Beings from other planets. However, I believe strongly I'm protected. I believe strongly that Earth is protected because, I mean, seriously, if they're that advanced, they would have been here taking us over already. But I believe there are massive amounts of beautiful, loving, way advanced than us beings who are watching us, well aware of us, taking care of the planet. They've certainly stopped a lot of nuclear events from happening, and that's been documented.
Right.
And then, I'm also tapped into a lot of the people, like a lobbyist, Stephen Bassett and Daniel Sheehan, folks I'm sure who are into all this, know exactly who I'm talking about. These are deep, well-known political lawyers and activists. And so, their information also is helpful. And then the universe is very generous with me, I feel, very kind. And I've never been whacked over the head with stuff like this. It's like the door opens, I step through it, and I feel like it's a graceful unfolding. So I started going to contact work, contact in the desert, contact retreats. And I guess the first thing that happened was a Joshua Tree. There was 4 of us who went to Joshua Tree, which there's a lot of sightings, a lot of activity, UFO activity. And we did everything right. We were doing, Dr. Stephen Greer has been on my show. We were doing his CE5 protocol. Everything was right. Rob and I played music, anything to attract some kind of connection. Nothing happened. And we left there like at 2:00 in the morning. And we're all really tired. And we're driving on the freeway. It's a long drive back to LA. The 2 people in the back seat of the truck have fallen asleep. I'm purposely staying awake to make sure Rob can stay awake while driving. And then all of a sudden, we're on the freeway, and I look up and I see this massive, like a hotel, hovering in the air in front of us on the freeway. And I go like, kind of blows your mind when you see something like that, because it's not an everyday occurrence.
Yes.
And there's no propulsion. It is not moving. There is nobody else on the freeway seeing it, which that doesn't make any sense. And I start saying, oh my God, my God, do you see this? Do you see this? So he sees it. And I say, pull over, because I want to start shooting video. And Rob says, I can't. It's really dangerous. There was a lot of cars, even at 2 a.m.
Right.
So we had to go quite far up before we could pull off. And we were too far. I still have footage, but we were still too far from it than we would have been had we pulled off immediately. The gals in the back seat, they wake up. Everybody's out there with their phones taking pictures and video. And so here's this craft, and it just suddenly turns and goes off. And then it's hovering in another place. And then it turns again and it's hovering. And none of this is fast. This is all very deliberate. And finally, we were minds blown. We know what we just saw. We get back in the truck to drive home, and it's tracking us. And then at some point just disappears. That was my first experience.
Wow.
And then I subsequently have had more experiences of craft, some pretty crazy stories that I could share anytime, but, you know, really amazing stuff. And I feel like there have been moments where I feel like I was being spoken to, even in a group where something would happen to me in the group, and a crazy town, how it happened. And it became abundantly clear what was going on and that they were trying to reach out to me. And I relish it all. I feel like they really know I exist. They know the work I'm doing. They know where my heart is. I feel supported. And then the most recent thing I've done is have a galactic Akashic record reading. And wow, that is the inception of your soul, what planet you came from, and how it unfolded. Man, I wish I did that because I would be, I'm telling you, people who do that, they make a lot of money and they're highly in demand. You're never going to run out of work because everybody wants to know that stuff. So, yes, I was very fortunate to get in with somebody who's not easy to get a reading with. And that changed my life forever too. Now I know so much about me. And when you understand what other planets you've been from, the skills you had, the relationships you had, you start going, oh my gosh, I get who I am, why my makeup is the way it is. It makes so much sense.
I've had that encounter myself last year on the beach, sitting on the beach, and a disc came by, and as you said before, nobody else saw it. It was midday, and I'm saying, this is how come nobody's looking up? And as I look up, it's hovering, and then it just took off back up into the clouds. And so for me, and then that same year, maybe a few months after, I was on the New Jersey Turnpike, and over my car was a blue light, like a Roman candle in the middle of the winter, just exploded right on in front of the car, like this pop, poof of blue light. So I was taken back. My girlfriend was driving with me in the car, and we couldn't believe what we saw. It was such an interesting phenomenon. And as you say, in terms of them reaching out for some particular reason, I guess knowing that a person like yourself has a lot of audience exposure, has the ability to share the information, gives the opportunity from a knowledgeable, uh, trustworthy person that they can hear information from. But what's so interesting is the fact that people are drawn to this, and then there's that always that feeling of being resistant towards completely feeling like it's completely off the charts of not being valid, or not trusting the things people say. And then all of a sudden you turn the corner and then you're in that ballpark of saying, yeah, I believe it now. It's just an interesting phenomenon. And so I
Yeah,
find it,
we're lucky.
yeah, I think I feel very fortunate actually to have these encounters. See it in the sky. I have a friend who films videos and he talks about spirituality. In the back is an orb that floats back and forth from side to side each time he talks
Mm,
about it in the sky. So um,
awesome.
it's we're on a path to, each one of us who's growing on a spiritual level is on a path of going down that rabbit hole and finding more and more information that past generations either shamed or wanted to hide away. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's somewhat of a lonely path if we don't have the right audience to share the information with.
Mm.
If for example, if I sit in my own little world and I try to talk to people I grew up with about this information, most of the people, you'd have to rise above it yourself and not feel like there's any sense of rejection. But then you find the people who you match the same frequency, you resonate with those people, and here we are. In terms
That's
of
so funny.
in
I
terms
just
of
want to say I grew up on Long Island, And I live in California now, but I grew up in Long Island, and I'm still, Facebook friends with a lot of people I grew up with, and I love them. I think they're all amazing. I had a great class. God, we had a pissa, if you know what that is.
Yeah, of
It's
course,
such
of
a
course.
good time. We laughed a lot. We were crazy. And I sometimes wonder, because I'm so not mainstream and I'm so out there. I mean, everybody sees my stuff. Like your interview, they'll see this interview, right? I will absolutely cross promote these links. And I wonder, but I also don't care, because if I'm opening, my openness opens the way for somebody who was like me, who was a total skeptic or in the closet and didn't even realize it. Oh, God bless. I'm so happy to do that. I really am. And you'll be interested to know, Adam, when Daryl Anka was on my show last week, Bashar,
Yes.
yeah, he said at one point, boy, we talked about a lot of stuff, but regarding UFOs, 2023, baby, get ready. Because the Phoenix Lights, which was a huge phenomenon that took place in Arizona, where 10,000 people saw spacecraft. I mean, they try to bury it like they
Yeah,
always
yeah, yeah,
do,
yeah.
right? But it was also 10 years ago. It was a long time ago, but still, it's a great reference point. But Daryl said, 2023, lots more like that coming down the pike, lots more to see. And there will be, it's happening slow because nobody's going to bombard us. They want us to slowly open up to this, but there will be more contact, actual contact. So people like you and I,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
It's exciting for me, and sometimes, in fact, you spoke about communication, the CE5 contact. I sat here on a Saturday night in my office. I couldn't sleep, so I went by the window, and I was just looking for something to. It's almost like a calling to not to go home. I don't know what that feeling is. It's a feeling of like, not that anyone is above the human experience and no one is better than it, but there are times when you do go up that pathway of learning and understanding and coming to conclusions that were suppressed or mocked or shamed. Somehow, just finding those new revelations within oneself is powerful. I don't think
Oh
we're going
my gosh.
to.
Absolutely. When you say that, that's truth. That is fact. And I think that's actually that's so more predominant than you might know, because I think a lot of us have that feeling like of going home and then like, well, this is home. What does that mean? But our highest soul understands, oh, I actually spent most of my incarnations, which have been a gabillion years, on Lyra, or the Pleiades or the Andromeda, or there's so many, as options. And we've also been in multiple galaxies, universes, and also a lot on Earth. And this is not the easy planet, right? Like I said, you got to have big shoulders being here. And I feel like that is a real, I would say, trust that if you feel like home, there's something calling you to what you know and was probably way more advanced and easier than here.
Interesting. When people are in the process of looking to write a book, what subject seems to be the most popular subject within a person's life, if there is one that they write about? Is it?
Oh, wow. A lot of people like to do self-help books. A lot of people, and wow, I think this is a huge undertaking, but a lot of people are drawn to do memoirs. I always think, how would I remember everything? But they do. It's incredible what they can write up. I have people who write books on crystals. I'm representing somebody right now. He's a very well-known Cirque du Soleil director and theater director, and he's written a book we're about to launch soon that creates it's the marriage of comedy and self-growth, like self-help. It's really a beautifully written book. Trying to think of all the people. Like I have somebody who's writing children's books, somebody's writing dragon books. There's everything. I've had someone who's written graphic novels. I think the subject that comes to you is the subject you're supposed to write about.
Yeah.
And then I have another client, and his story is a little more interesting. He was with a woman for many decades who was older than he, and she was apparently a profound healer and also this sort of outrageous personality. Used to go all around the world and meet all sorts of amazing people. And he wanted to write a book about her because she's passed, to honor her life. And he started on that path, and he was a bit lost about how to write. And so he's part of my group and got a lot of guidance. His writing got better and better. And then he got a revelation. And this can happen too. And it's okay, however it unfolds. But his revelation, he decided to include a story about him growing up. And he read it in class. And everybody in class was like, "Oh, that's an amazing, like, that's a crazy, amazing story." And he said, "Yeah, I realize this book is actually about me. She's going to be a part of it because she was part of my life, but this is actually my memoir." And he started sharing his life stories, and we're like, "Oh, yeah, these stories have to be told. You've led quite a life." So sometimes people are super clear most of the time and they write that. But then, like this fellow, you start out and then the book reveals itself if you keep doing the process. And they're all correct, right? They're all perfect ways to get there.
I put together a documentary film over the last 2 years. It was in the film festivals in New York. I'm not a documentary filmmaker, but I then realized the not the perseverance, but the drive that was within me. I think that was profound. That regardless of what skill sets I took into becoming a documentary filmmaker, I knew I was going to complete it. And so that it was a personal journey myself of a memoir of my grandmother's love story from World War II, which I'm also in the process of. I have her diaries, I have her photos from prior war to the present time, which I'm trying to organize into a book. So I'll be speaking with you probably about that. That would be something
Oh
someday.
my God, that's amazing. So you're Jewish, yeah?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Me too. And so this is where was your relative from?
Well, it actually was a mixed marriage. My grandmother, no, my grandmother actually, they were Russian Orthodox from
Mhm.
the Ural Mountains, which is near Siberia. So my grandmother and my biological grandfather, who I made the documentary film about, was killed during World War II.
Mm.
And so my grandmother remarried when the Polish Jews escaped the Germans' occupation of Poland. The Polish Jews went up to Russia, and my grandmother then met my new grandfather, who wasn't my biological grandfather, but came to Brooklyn with her after the war. And so I found my grandfather, the Russian soldier, I found where he was buried, where he was killed, through my grandmother's diaries. And that was a love story that she had, and she never told anybody about it. She just had it in her diaries. And I found my grandfather, found the family. I connected my father, who I had a rough childhood with growing up because of his own traumas, PTSD from World War II as a child.
Mm.
And so I connect through. So basically, what I learned is how we have to understand each other's stories. That's why I'm so interested in telling the story myself and hearing stories.
Oh, wow. You and I have a lot in common. That's amazing. That's so beautiful that you're the voice to tell that story when it would have been buried in a diary and God knows where it would have ended up, but that
Yeah, I
you
have it all,
unearthed
and
it.
I went back to the hometown, home the village, which is like all northern Russia, where nobody goes. And in fact, it was where the Vietnam camps were for the American soldiers. That's where my family in Russia lived, all the way up north. And in those areas, when I went there, I met the librarian who knew a student who was a student of my grandfather. He was a school teacher before he left for war. So here I come walking through the village, and they say, "Who's this?" And they say, "This is the grandson of Nikolai Vinkentovich Turabanov." And they say, "That was my teacher." And the woman cries, and she comes over. And I filmed, I did it in a documentary film. So the story is what's profound for me, and I wanted to ask you is because not everybody, not everybody has to be famous to tell a story. So many times in life, we think that because this person was a movie star, they were in Hollywood, that their story is more significant than a regular individual. But yet we suffer our own tragedies within our own ways, sometimes more expansive, I think more in depth than even people who are more shallow than us. And our stories need to be told. So I felt,
Absolutely. And a great story is a great story. It doesn't, you're right. It doesn't have to have a name attached to it. In fact, if somebody told a story, and you're just enwrapped with what's going on and what's going to happen and how's it going to unfold and what path is all of that. We all love a great story, a good storyteller. So yes, I think your relative's story, your grandfather's story, it's so cool. And I was thinking when you said that they grew up in a village near Siberia. That's kind of interesting because Siberia is actually where the first original, that's where shamanism comes from.
Yeah.
So that's the inception of shamanism. So it just makes me wonder about your path a little
Well,
bit. What's
I've
your life?
spoken to other people in the village, and most of them were they're indigenous people actually. They're called the Komi people, the Komi Republic. It was in the Ural region, and the people took on the Cyrillic Russian letters, but they had their own language. So they had their own traditions, they had their own folklore. But some of the people who are still alive in their 80s, who I speak to in the computer, they tell me, no, there's no such thing, because they're highly into the religious indoctrination of things. But they definitely had a connection to different gods and pagans and all kinds of other types of things. Yeah. What I was going to ask you is, what makes a good podcast, good podcaster, and how does someone increase their audience?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Good question, deep question. So there's a lot that goes into a good podcast. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all of these combined, but any of these, and certainly if you can combine them, it's amazing. I mean, first of all, if you have someone with a great personality, chatty, is a great storyteller, tons like Joe Rogan, are you serious? Do you know that guy? I don't know what his IQ is,
Yeah.
but he reads things and remembers everything. So his detail at being able to converse with a guest is beyond. His capacity is so impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, and of course he comes from a comedy background. It makes him very, very interesting guy. Um, if the personality doesn't have to be in place, but I would say curiosity is huge to really truly be curious. I do a lot of research. So I don't go in blind. I don't just look at somebody's bio. I actually kind of like to unearth things that the person won't know. Um, I find it very interesting to be able to deep dive with somebody. And even though I may know where I'm headed with somebody that I'm interviewing, I have a wide berth that they're going to bring something up. It almost always happens. And it's become just so fascinating. And we end up going back and forth about that. But then, there's a musicality, like I said, where yeah, we need to switch directions a little bit. Otherwise, sometimes you can just charge straight through with somebody because that's good too. I think it's really an ability to be in a conversation, but also of an element of you that's also looking at the matrix of the conversation and knowing what needs to happen when. I would say also there is, besides really being knowledgeable about the subject the person's going to talk about, I think to have an intimate conversation is huge.
Right.
I was just interviewed by somebody, and I love this interview. I've been promoting it like crazy. I was on somebody else's show, and she had this ability to ask questions that actually caused this tremendous aha in me. And the feeling I got listening back to it, and folks I know have listened back to it, have all said, it kind of felt like you were at Starbucks and like you guys were so intimate in your conversation. I felt like I wasn't supposed to be listening, but I was able to hear everything that was going on. It was incredible. And you want to give that kind of synergy, that kind of real connection, intimacy between you and the guest. Now, how the guest shows up is,
Right.
important too. But, all of those elements. And then I guess, know your vibe. Is it like, are you a 15-minute kind of person? I'm in and out. And I just want to, drop some wisdom. And then that's my show. Are you a 30-minute interview? My show's an hour. Yeah, you have to decide what's the right length for you. And as far as growing it, because I came up at such a different time, but when I came up, like people weren't doing this. I was only doing radio. And then this weird word podcast came and everybody made fun of it and said, haha, that'll never last.
Right.
And I was like, well, I think I'll do that too. I'll just syndicate. And thank God, because obviously it's viable. It's here to stay. There's over 2 million podcasts today. It's, beloved by many people. It's a great entertainment form, and you can find a show about anything out in the world. So
Yeah.
the idea is, how do you stand out? And the first and most important thing I say is to niche your show. So instead of doing a show, for instance, that is about, well, first of all, you could do a show about cars. That's huge. So many people could come and listen to it. But what if you made it even more narrow a path and say it's about rebuilding old cars? Okay, now you've taken out a lot of that audience, and the people who actually rebuild old cars want to listen to your shows. But then what if you said this is about rebuilding old Mustangs or 1965 Mustangs? Boom. What's beautiful about that is you don't have to have 100,000 followers or listeners. You could have 1,000. You could have 500. You have 2,000, which is small numbers, right? But if you have that, this is a highly engaged audience. If you're selling stuff, if you've got sponsors, if you've got ads, let me tell you, those people are buying
Right, right,
because,
right.
right? So niching your show is extremely important. And then at some point, to stand out from the noise, I do think it's important to hire. Depends. I don't do editing on mine, but I have somebody who works on my YouTube channel. It's, you can only be fabulous at so much.
Right,
And
right.
then I have to turn it over. So, yes, I've got somebody who's helping me build that channel because of all the platforms I'm on, radio and podcast. That's been my weakest. I think I'm up to 4,300 subscribers. And that's not huge on YouTube. But I am really ready to play a big game because I can monetize there and I can, um,
Right.
create a membership channel. There's so much I can do already, but I want the numbers first. So I have a highly engaged Mustang audience, if you will.
Right. So how have you narrowed the audience down, or have you not done that?
Yeah, when I switched, Adam, I had a lot of question. Oh my gosh, I'm Dare to Dream. I don't quite feel like I do that anymore. It's not really about creating dreams. It's really about UFOs. It's really about paranormal. It's really about channeling and very cutting edge metaphysics. And so for a while, I played with rebranding my show. And I knew rebranding my show, I was going to take a huge hit. When you've been doing what I've been doing for 15 and a half years, there's a lot of people still with you on this journey. And if I suddenly change Dare to Dream with Debbi Dachinger to XYZ, I'm going to lose people. And so I put it out there to some experts, branding experts, to say, what are your thoughts? And they said, absolutely don't change the name of your show. Here's what's weirdly beautiful. And you couldn't have known this when you named your show, but Dare to Dream really is viable still for what you're doing today. So trust that, but change, in my description, I'm very clear what I offer.
Right, right, right.
In the beginning of the show, I'm very clear what I offer, and people know. And much to my amazement, when I shifted my focus and I thought, oh boy, what if I lose listeners? Nope. Not only did I not lose listeners and watchers, but even more came aboard. So I knew, following energy, I was also creating a service for other people that they really wanted and needed, and that it was just right. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm very fascinated. I played college baseball, and I
Mm.
had this diversity of being athletic, being grounded, playing ice hockey, hockey, and then going on this path of personal internal growth and trying to learn myself a little bit better and to become more authentic to the person I want, who I was. And yet, in terms of trying to get guests in the sports world, and then looking at the information that at UFOs and NDEs and things to that nature, I don't know in terms of maybe the numbers, but that's one of my interests is to communicate with the men who are athletes and where they are on their own journey, if they've grown, if they've come to a different place in their lives of understanding the balance between the masculine parts and the feminine parts, or the balance of themselves, which is some of the things that I've experienced on my own journey. So, yeah,
I have to say, I mean, you didn't ask me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I think it would be amazing if you had a show called Sports and Spirituality.
that's
Now, you'd have to be clear in the description. You're not talking about religion because there'll be enough people who will think that.
right,
But yeah, um, or maybe sports and modern spirituality, some way to typify that, or, create another S word, sports and something S spirituality. That would be amazing. And I bet there's tons of athletes out there who would fit that bill. And then you'd be really in a niche that people would love to hear. And I
yeah.
think that would be cool.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I spoke to one athlete who's into yoga, into ayahuasca, into
Mm.
gone up at an NHL hockey player, so that was good. Uh,
Yeah, and I even recently, because I've done ayahuasca and all that, and I know this amazing, she's a pretty famous vegan chef, and she was saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger, apparently bodybuilder, I've met him. He's he's amazing, dirty mouth, but amazing. And Arnold is now a vegan, and probably much longer than it's even sounding coming out of my mouth. But he's a huge proponent for that. And there's tons of these guys who visualize and meditate, and I think you'd have a pretty cool field to draw from.
okay. I wanted to discuss just one more thing based upon your interest in sound healing and the means of which you express yourself through sound.
Hmm. What would you like to know?
Well, I know you sing. Do you sing, correct?
I do, yes.
How does that assist you in terms of personal healing, or how does it make you feel?
Oh, I just did a sound healing yesterday, and it's just amazing. I gave up singing 15 years ago. I left the band I was singing with. I Yeah, wow. So powerful, because there was only so much of me to go around, and I was very much excited about radio, podcasts, writing books, coaching people. I was immersed in that world, and I said, "It's okay. I've had a long run doing entertainment. I bless it. I thank it for all it's given me, and I let it go." And it was actually during a ceremony that, at the very beginning of COVID, I was in a ceremony. This one happened to be a San Pedro ceremony. Now, San Pedro is a very heart opening plant. And, typically you're just like, oh, there's a lot of love and connection, and it's beautiful, right? You see everything more clearly. But this was like a weird journey, because the whole time the divine was coming to me and saying, you need to clean this up. You need to end that. You need to, like, all this stuff. Like, I literally had, when I came out and I was sober, I had to write all this down, and I implemented right away. And then towards the end, the divine said, whatever happened to music? And I'm like, and it gave me like these visions. When I was a kid, I was a violin player, and I was an exceptional violin player until I was 16. And then I was so much more interested in being social. And I gave it up. It is a regret I still have that I let that go. But I guess I did the best I could at 16. And then singing, as you know, I did all my entire life, from the time I was born just about till 15 years ago. And so it was like a strange thing. It just lobbed in my lap, this question about music. At the end of the ceremony, we went around in an integration circle, and you share, everybody listens, nobody talks, there's no crosstalk, shaman there, and all the shamans facilitators. And I shared, because it was a pretty cool day. And then I said, and then this thing happened, this question. And I shared it. And fascinating that the shaman would reply to my share. And again, the divine coming in, because the shaman said, Debbie, music never left you. And I want to tell you a story about me and music. And he told this beautiful, moving story about he had given up piano and why, and it made sense. And then how music came back in his life. And I know today he's this amazing musician, flute player, has flutes from all over the world. So he had this total renaissance and now love affair with music. And he's a great musician. And so he left me with that. And then we came home, and my partner, who had been a professional guitar player and had also let that go, I don't know, 15 years ago, probably, also pulled out his guitar, started playing. We started singing medicine music. And 1 month later, we were booked on our first gig. And it was terrifying, because our first gig was an ayahuasca ceremony. And of course, everybody drinks. It doesn't matter what you're doing, everybody's on the same level. The
Right.
amount you drink can be different, but we did drink, and we played in the pitch dark. I mean, it was a crazy town thing to do, your first gig, but it opened us up. The divine was just saying, you're on the right path. You're on the right path. We kept getting booked now at parties, at festivals, at retreats, and all of this. And we do everything from musical concerts and very uplifting songs to these sound bath, sound healing meditation experiences. And we are very much evolving. 100%. It keeps evolving. We recently did a gig where somebody came in and I spontaneously invited them to do light language while we played. And that was so huge a hit with everybody there. We're going to do more of that. So, yeah, we're growing by leaps and bounds. It is like one of the greatest teachers for me. On the one hand, if anybody had said I would give up singing and come back and frankly be a better singer, I would have never believed it. Because as you age, typically, it actually is more and more difficult for the voice to be as good as when you're, maybe in your 20s. But I not only have at least as good a voice, but my range has completely increased. And part of that I owe to mushrooms, to be honest. During a mushroom trip, I had something very profound happen that really opened up my throat.
Wow.
And so I'm being very honest. I hope it's okay to say all
Wow.
this on your show. Yeah. But the singing thing, I thought it was my shaman journey. And now I see I have another part of a shaman journey to have. And I just feel like it is the most beautiful way for me to serve people. When they come up after our sound baths or our performances, and, people say really amazing things about what happened for them and how they're feeling. It's incredible. And I'll tell you, I was a little bit, I don't know how to describe it, but I was a little bit off yesterday when we started doing our sound bath. And that's not where I want to be. I want to be in a space of love, right? But I was a little bit off I have a lot going on in my life. Usually my life is gearing down now and it's ramping up. So big plans apparently for Debbie.
Hmm.
And it caused me to be a little bit off, a little bit tired. And then I had this thought and I appreciated it. And I said, Deb, what if somebody in this room was thinking about killing themselves and they came to this sound bath today? It is incumbent on you, whatever you have to do to go inside, you need to bring it and you need to heal. And that's all you need to do is let it come through you. You're a channel. And because a lot of what I do is spontaneous singing. And yeah, that completely righted the ship. I was like, yeah, man, I'm here to be of service. And that's it. And if I'm here, I'm going to be fully here right now. Nothing else in this moment matters. It was so helpful. And so I'm very grateful. I'm blown away that I'm doing this. And I love what's being born out of us. And I think next on the docket is I've written lots of poems and to have those turned into songs.
Yeah. Well, you said the increasing of ascension is going to be more prolific in these times, and people are actually opening themselves up, feeling it. So many people are seeking and trying to find information that corresponds with what they're feeling, and trying to venture out into those open seas. If somebody was interested in getting in contact with you, where could they reach you?
Yeah. Well, my website is my name. It's DebbiDachinger.com, but you need to spell it correctly. It's Debbi. There's no E, Debbi. And the last name is Austrian. So it's Dachinger. So it's DebbiDachinger.com. I'm also on Instagram, Debbi Dachinger. You can DM me there, but I think it's easier just to go through the website and see all of what's possible.
Yeah, and if you'd like to leave us with like one message.
Mm, yeah. Can I go in my heart for a second?
Of course.
I really feel like we're so much greater, all of us, so much greater than we know. And it's almost like we came in this time in this life and chose to forget how incredibly powerful we are because we wouldn't know what to do with all that. But I feel like this is our Sherlock Holmes time, right? Where we're in a big mystery and finding out the clues and the pieces of our limitlessness. And I would say embrace that, the greatness you are and that you came here to be. And if you are having a difficult time during ascension, Just trust. Underbellies are being exposed to be healed. That's it. That's the only reason why so much is happening fast. And I say that because next year is going to be even more. And I know that may sound like, oh, but that also means that a lot of good is going to come too. So, hold on to your spiritual hat. Trust that you're here for great reason. Unearth that reason and the potency you came here to be. And know that you're a piece of the puzzle here on earth.
Those are excellent and inspiring words. And on that note, I want to thank you, Debbi Dachinger, for being with us today and sharing your insight and your authenticity and live, the wisdom that you've accrued at this point so far, and just looking a little bit into the future. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you too, Adam. It's been a pleasure.